The second best league in the world gets underway this week, so it's time for some predictions. Where do we think every team will be finishing up come May? Let's discuss our expectations for all 20 Premier League teams with a twist. I do it differently to your favourite content creator. Hopefully, I can be your second favourite content creator. They'll do the league table 1 to 20, and I don't like to do that. Well, I do. Just not yet. There's far too much variables at the minute. We've got no evidence to go on. The transfer window's still open for another couple of weeks, which is a big contributing factor to success or failure. Plus, there are nine new managers at clubs in the Premier League, the most there's ever been ahead of the opening day. And I'm not even convinced they'll all be here. All 20 will still be here after the first international break. I think we might even see our first managerial change at that point. This is how I like to do it. A tier list, where I think they'll be roughly. And then once the transfer window is closed, I will do my 1 to 20 with the aim of beating Spencer Owen. I beat him last season, and I'm going to beat him again. He doesn't know we're competing, by the way. This is very much a one-sided rivalry. But I'm okay with that. And I guess Spencer is as well, because what you don't know can't harm you. Anyway, let's start getting to the teams, into the tiers as we discuss them as we go. It's in a very random order. This is someone else's tier list. I've just stole it. Saves me having to create one. So I don't know why they're in the order they are. But because of that unknown factor, I'm going to leave it like that. Anyway, if you're new to Tartan, please do subscribe. Drop a like on the video. Hype it if you've got some points left. Bournemouth, one of the teams with a new manager. I'm going to put them in boring, but safe, but boring. I should explain the tiers, shouldn't I? They're quite self-explanatory. Relegation battle. They're going to be in the thick of it. Be careful. They are I've added a new tier this year. They are the ones that may get dragged into a relegation battle, because there's a couple of teams that should be all right, but you just don't know. Boring but safe. I don't think they'll get European football. I also don't think they'll get relegated. Get your passport. Now, it's difficult with the Premier League. At least when you do the championships, you know the playoffs go down to 8th. But with the Premier League, you don't know where the European spots finish. It could be the top 6, could be the top 7, could be the top 8. You just don't know. But European contenders, then at the top, you can win it. The teams that we think may be in a title race. Bournemouth, I think, will be boring. How will they get on post-Areola? How big a factor was he to Bournemouth's success? I think he was a big factor in their playing style. In terms of their player recruitment, not so much. I don't mind the business they've done so far. They've not lost anyone of note yet, which is important, keeping that core together. Alex Scott may be subjected to a bid later on in the window. I'm surprised no one's gone for him yet. Man United or Liverpool in particular. I think he would be a top signing for someone, but he's still there. So I think they've got more than enough quality. European football factor, going to make it tricky for Bournemouth, I think, but I suspect they'll be okay. I don't know enough about Marco Rose to sit here and give a strong opinion on him, but I think this season you're going to have to be bad to get relegated if you were in the Premier League last season. Arsenal, yeah, right at the top. It's a bit boring, isn't it? But listen, boring is sometimes correct. Best team in the league last season, and they've strengthened in the summer. I like the signing of Solis. I like the signing of Bruno a lot. I think Trossard might be a bigger miss than expected. If I was an Arsenal fan, I would have wanted to sell Martinelli and retain Trossard, because he was capable of big moments. But they've got a settled team now. I know Saliba's injured, but they'll be fine. Mosquera will come into the defence. They'll be fine. I think some players will step up this season. Lewis Skelly, Calafiori, I think will have a bigger impact than what they did previous season. Arsenal will be fine. I'm not even convinced they've finished their business yet either. Crystal Palace, post Glasner. I don't know enough about some of their business either. They've just signed, what's his face from the MLS? Ozo, is that his name? He's got a nice name anyway. I'll put them in the safe but boring. European football though. No, what? I'm going to put them in to be careful. It's just, I worry. And this isn't the only time I'm going to say it. I worry how good the previous manager was in regards to that stability. And Palace went a long period last season under Glasner. And you may say it's because of Glasner, but Palace went a long period without picking up much wins last year. And they need to just be careful. A really bad season and a really good season for one of the three, maybe they could get relegated. But that's why I've added in this extra tier, to be honest with you, because it's going to take a significant drop-off for one of the 17 last year to go down. And I think there may be a drop-off at Selhurst Park. I just don't know if it'd be that significant. Look at their transfers. There's nothing there that tickles my fancy yet. I think they need to bring in creativity. They've obviously signed Dwight McNeil. It's not enough for me. I think he's a very average Premier League player. Granted, a very average Premier League player left Selhurst Park, but I don't think they've upgraded from Brennan Johnson. I think they've just replaced him with another underwhelming player. I'd be a little bit worried as a Crystal Palace fan this year. But they've had a fantastic couple of seasons, and I think they pay off. You'll have a bad season, but you have those two that you've just had. I think they'd be okay with that trade-off. Everton, I'm going to put in the safe but boring. I quite like their transfer business. Obviously, Gay going is a blow, but I like the signing of Nord. I think it's a very wise signing. I think Caden Hackney is a brilliant signing. Obviously, they've still got Dewsbury Hall, Garner. For crying out loud, will you sign a right back? Why have they not? How have they not signed a right back? A handful of days before the Premier League season gets underway, and they've still not signed a right back. This isn't a new issue. They've had this issue for a couple of seasons now, at least. Depending on how you want to, when you gave up on Nathan Patterson and thought Coleman was finished. But it's just madness that they're not signing a right back. Things feel a bit stale under Moyes already. He's only been there a year and a bit, and it already feels a little bit stale. His football was poor, and it was quite criminal that they didn't get European football in the end. They were sort of leading the pack, weren't they? And they were just turned crap at the end of the season. Just when they needed to get points on the board, they stopped. So I think they'll be safe, but boring, but safe. It's maybe the style of football as well as the results. Aston Villa, yeah, you're going to have to put them in the European race, aren't they? Lost Tielemans, lost Rodgers, lost Lucadine, but I quite like the business they've done. Manzambi in particular, I'm a big fan of him. I'm excited to see him in the Premier League. Suzuki, a goalkeeper with a big reputation. My team, West Ham, were strongly linked to him a couple of seasons. Well, actually, last summer we were strongly linked to him, but he wanted to wait for a bigger club. PSG came along, of course, but it didn't happen, so he's gone to Aston Villa. Martinez off to Juventus. But Emery's still there. He's the most important person. Do you know when they say no player is bigger than the club? That is true. But I think some players are really good. And I think they've lost that in Yuri Tielemans. However, I think Emery is the most important component at that football club, and he's still there. Champions League football. But they were playing European football last season, and they still got Champions League football. And I appreciate there's a difference between Champions League, Europa League. But a lot of the players that played in Premier League were playing in Europa League for Aston Villa. I suspect they'll be okay. Just at the start of the year, 2026 calendar year, January time, they were in a title race. They were up there with Man City, in between Arsenal and Man City at times as well. I suspect they'll be well in the race for Champions, not just European football, Champions League football. There's a lot of uncertainty at some of the Sky Sports 6 in the Premier League. Liverpool, one of those clubs that you can argue have uncertainty. I'm going to put them in the passport category. I like the appointment of Iraola. Hopefully he will unlock the potential of some of the players they signed last summer. I suspect Isak will have a good season. I'm really looking forward to Wirtz this season. I think he'll be a top player. No reason why Kirkens won't get back to the way he was at Bournemouth. Konate's gone, but I think that's a good thing. Now we'll see what Jacket can do in there as well. I don't mind their business. I'm surprised they've not done a little bit more. Some talk of Gakpo potentially leaving. But I think the squad's okay. Obviously no Salah now, so that'll be interesting. But big opportunity for Rio to really stake a claim. I think because Iraola's gone in there, if there's an issue, it's not his fault. I think he's a good manager. And I think the football can be enjoyable at Liverpool. I don't think they'll be challenging for the title, but I suspect they'll be in and around the conversation in the top four. I expect them to get Champions League football this season. Man U. I'll put them in the passport, but I'll tell you what, I'm here. if I was to do the 1 to 20, they wouldn't feature high up the table. And I promise you, this isn't my bias, okay? I feel like saying my team's not in the league anymore, I'm no longer biased. That would be a lie. I probably still do have a little bit anti-Man U, anti-Spurs, and I've probably got a little bit pro for the likes of Villa, Newcastle, Sunderland, just clubs that I like. Unconvinced by Carrick. Unconvinced. And I'm aware since he went to Man U, I think they picked up the most points. Maybe Arsenal picked up more points, but at worst, they're second. I'm always wary of a caretaker manager, and that's what he was. I'm always wary of a caretaker manager performing well and getting a job permanently. How much did you ride off just being a fresh face and a new voice, a different voice? How much did you ride off the fact that you were not Ruben Amorim or Erik ten Hag? Two managers who felt unpopular with the Man United players by the end of it. So how much difference does it make by he's just not them? Moving Fernandes into that number 10 role helped a lot. Casemiro gone, but I think they've recruited well with Tielemans and Andre Santos. I'm a fan of both signings. I think both are good signings. So they should have a decent season, but they've got Champions League football now. I'm going to make it slightly trickier for them. I'm just unconvinced by Man U. I think they'll be top 8, but I don't think they'll be top 4. I think they'll be in that 6th, 7th, 8th positions. So chance of European football, but they may find themselves relying upon someone ahead of them winning the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. Newcastle United, I'll put in safe but boring. A bit of a transition season for them, but you know what? That's okay. I'm intrigued by their manager quite a lot. The more I've read about him, the more I quite like him. And I'm not even seeing Newcastle play under him yet. I know he's had a couple of pre-season games and whatnot. I've not watched any of it. None of it whatsoever. But I quite like what I'm hearing. He's obviously won leagues before, won the Asian Champions League, plays attacking football. So his brand seems good. I don't mind the recruitment they've done. Bringing in young players, lots of potential. Spent big on a couple of goalkeepers, spent big on a fullback, 2 central midfielders, a winger. I don't mind that. Bringing in players that should improve. How did they cope with the loss of not just Bruno, Tonali and Gordon, but also the likes of Kieran Trippier, big characters? What about the loss of Eddie Howe and Jason Tyndall? Big characters again at St James's Park. There's a lot of change there. So I think a season of just letting the manager settle in, letting these young players learn their trade in the Premier League without the pressures of European football and without the pressures of qualifying for European football. When I say that, the board may be putting pressure on them to go get Champions League football again, and they should. That's their ambition. But I don't think it's there from Newcastle fans. From what I'm reading and hearing from Newcastle fans, I think there's a lot of patience with the new manager. Frustrations with the board, perhaps. So I think a season of transition, as long as they see green shoots where the football's good, the young players they brought in are good, they just need to get up to speed with the Premier League, I think I would consider that to be a successful season for Newcastle with the aim of going on and becoming better and more successful the following season. Newcastle just progressed way too quickly under Eddie Howe. That was a good thing at the time, but become a problem pretty quickly, I think, in the transfer window. That they were trying to sign players for the Champions League, but they were unable to attract those players. And I think what they're doing now is what they needed to do a few seasons ago, but they couldn't because of the success Eddie Howe brought, which is bringing in players that will be more than good enough for Champions League football. So they no longer have to attract a finished article, and I think that's what they were trying to do. They've now got to attract the players that could become the finished article, and they've shown they can absolutely do that this summer. I'm actually looking forward to watching Newcastle United this season. Anything is possible. Spurs, I'll put up in the get your passport an outside chance of European football. No European football is going to help them. I like De Zerbi. I like some of the business they've done, but they are lacking at the top end of the pitch. Bringing in likes of Senesi and Robertson on frees, clever business, smart business. I think Fernandes is a great signing for them. Tonali is a great signing for them. It's just out wide and up front, they are lacking. They've still got Richarlison and Solanke. So I think, do you know that, you see that meme of a horse, don't you? And it's got the back end of like a stallion, and at the front end, it's a drawing of a horse. It's a bit like that. Spurs are a bit like that at the minute. So I expect them to be in the transfer market again before the end of the transfer window. Hence why I prefer to do it this way. So the range of Spurs this season is anywhere in the top 10 bar the top 2, really. So from 3rd down to 10th, I think Spurs can finish anywhere in there. But they've certainly got a chance of European football, but I do think it's going to require further reinforcements. Van Heck, another good signing for them. Obviously getting rid of Romero. Don't think it's a bad thing to get rid of him and just have a fresh start under De Zerbi. As for Brentford, one of the few teams with, 11 teams have their manager from last season, so that's a lie. But Keith Andrews into his second spell now. He's not only sort of got through his first one, he's succeeded. I'm going to put them in the safe but boring. Didn't quite finish the season on a high, did they? But I think they can be optimistic for the season. They've retained their players, obviously losing Henderson, but he needs to be replaced by, in terms of like a character rather than his footballing ability on the pitch. Sangare looks like a really good signing as well. I've heard and read a lot of good things about him, so I'm intrigued to see how he gets on in the Premier League. But I think they'll be okay this season. There's nothing to suggest that they're going to suddenly fall off and become difficult. But at the same time, I'm not really seeing anything that says they're going to improve. I think they are just going to stay where they are, which is a stable Premier League team. And for Brentford, the size of Brentford, that is success. For Keith Andrews, that would be success. I think they'll be top end of the bottom half of the table, which is fine. Brighton, a club I maybe always have unfair expectations of. I always think they've got a really good team and therefore they should be competing for European football. And they were last season getting European football, albeit the Conference League. I'll put them in the safe but boring. But they are maybe one team I would expect to reevaluate at the end of the window depending on their business, because Welbeck's gone. Don't think they've replaced him. Baliba could be going to Man United. So I'm expecting Brighton to get active. Obviously Van Heck's been sold, but I think they've replaced him incredibly well. I think they've got a good signing there. I just don't know what to expect too much. Herzler is a bit of a weird manager. Sometimes he looks like the best thing since sliced bread, and then the next day he looks like a mouldy bit of bread. So I'm finding it difficult to gauge Brighton, and I think the lack of transfer activity isn't really helping. And I haven't seen him during pre-season, so are we still going to see Jack Hinshelwood in the number 10, or are we going to see Rutter there and Hinshelwood drop into a more deeper position? We'll wait and see. I need to evaluate them quickly over the course of the start of the season, which is a weird thing to say for a side that hasn't been active in the transfer window and has still got the same manager. Normally, you would expect more of the same. But I feel like, I always think in football, you're either moving forwards or backwards. You don't stand still. Not many teams finish in the same position 2 seasons on the bounce, unless like you're winning the league, for example. So what are Brighton going to do? They're going to get better? Potentially, but I find it difficult. They're going to get worse. I think that's more likely. But maybe they'll do the same thing twice. Maybe they'll just finish where they did last season. Chelsea, I'm going to put in Get Your Passport. A big job, an important job for Xabi Alonso. Did fantastic with Leverkusen, went to Real Madrid. Didn't really stand a chance, did he? And this is a big job he's taken with Chelsea. However, given the title of manager rather than head coach, I think that's what they need. I think they need a bit of a Klopp-type impact that he had at Liverpool, where he just moulded the club like Emery with Aston Villa. I think Chelsea needs someone like that. Is Alonso that man? We'll wait and see. They've just got far too many players at the minute. Like 50 players or something absolutely stupid. So it's difficult to work out who's going to be involved and who's not going to be involved. But they've certainly got lots of options. Pedro up front, I think, will have a fantastic season. They've got rid of 1 or 2 players they don't need, like Garnacho. I think Lacroix is a brilliant pickup from Crystal Palace. 52 million is a bit chunky, but I think he's a really good Premier League centre-back. I have hopes for them, and you know what? We should have hopes for Chelsea. We should have expectations for them, which is, will go on and get the Champions League. And I think they'll get European football. It's just whether it's top 4 or top 6 is the big question at present. I'm intrigued. There's a lot of clubs I'm intrigued by here. Coventry City, right. Now, unfortunately, this is where we start filling out the bottom, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, even a good season for Coventry, it will still include a relegation battle, but surviving. I'm a bit worried about their transfer business. I feel like they're doing a little bit of what Ipswich did a couple of seasons ago, where you bring in good Championship players. I like the football that Frank Lampard plays, though, and they've certainly got one or two current players that were at Coventry last season that should be good enough for the Premier League, but I think there's only a handful of them. Their business, I'm just not convinced by. Signing Rushworth was important, big money, 22 million. Is he good enough for the Premier League? I think so. I think he is. But it's important, but it's a lot of money to just retain the goalkeeper you had the previous season. I just don't think they've got the quality. I'm just not. It's a shame because I would like to see them stay up. I'm just not sure they will. Fulham, I'm going to put in to be careful. A lot of change. How important was Marco Silva to Fulham? How much of that stability that Fulham have had is down to Marco Silva? And I think it's quite a bit. Will Arbeloa be able to do that? I'm not so sure. Big money they spent on Garcia, Palacios coming in from Real Madrid. Big expectations, because you spend that much money, you should expect a lot from them. Diop going out the door as well. So they've done some okay business. Wilson gone, who was quite important to them last season in terms of just turning 1 point into 3. Even under that stable Marco Silva, Raul Jimenez gone as well. I'm a bit worried for Fulham this season. I am. I think they're on the verge of a relegation battle. The only thing preventing me putting them in there is that I'm just not sure the promoted 3 are good enough, because it requires Fulham to drop off a lot, but also the 3 to improve. Now, I'm comparing the promoted 3 not to Leeds and Sunderland, because I think that would be unfair. I don't think you can ask any of the 3 to do what Sunderland have done. But what you have to ask them to do is to do what Leeds did. Can you come up, be in a bit of a relegation battle, but pull away at the end and be safe? Because that is their aim. But I'm comparing them to Ipswich City a couple of seasons ago, Burnley. I'm not sure. Are they as good as West Ham were last season? I'm not so sure. Hull, no. Too championshipy. I know this sounds really bad, and I apologise to any Hull fans, but I just don't see you having any chance of staying up. The business so far hasn't made me think, wow, this is good recruitment. This is giving themselves a chance. The numbers in the Championship felt like they overachieved by getting the playoffs, never mind promotion. And they did overachieve getting to the Premier League, and that's okay. You're allowed to say that. You're allowed to think that. But to go from that to then surviving in the Premier League is a hell of a jump, whereas the 2 that got promoted alongside them, I think, deserve to get promoted. I think the gap is lesser for those, and I'm not sure they'll be able to do it. So I think Hull needed miracles in the window, and I don't think they performed that. And I'm actually quite fearful for them this season. It could be they get off to a tough start, don't put much points on the board, and therefore don't pick up early momentum and confidence. It could be a long old season for them. Ipswich are going to be in the relegation battle. I do like their recruitment, though. I think bringing in Lukic is a very good signing. Florentino was decent at Burnley last season, but in a poor Burnley side. So there's something about him. I think Maeda is a good signing. Fatawu is a good signing. They've got goals, assists in between them. I like the recruitment. I think they've changed from what they did a couple of years ago, when it felt like they were building a Championship dream team with O'Shea, Greaves, and it didn't work. And I think this time round, it's a deal. They're bringing in players with experience in the Premier League, and players that were playing in the Premier League. You know, Diop and Lukic were playing. They were maybe not first choice. You know, Bassey and Anderson were, but Diop performed well for Fulham last season. I think he'll be a big miss for them. He did well when he was called upon. So I think that's a good signing for Ipswich. Gary O'Neill is manager. He's done it before in the Premier League, did it with Bournemouth. But he didn't do it with Wolves. Well, he did, then he didn't. I think they've got a chance. I think they've got the best chance of the 3 to stay up. But they need to improve a lot. But they also require a drop-off from one of the teams. And that's the biggest issue here for me. It's, will one of the 17 be that bad? Because when you think of the teams that survived last season, 17th, Spurs, they ain't going to be 17th again. Leeds United, no. Crystal Palace, maybe. That's why I've got them in to be careful. But the teams that just stayed outside of relegation zone, it's hard to see them going down. Leeds, they're here, aren't they? They should have a really good season. I feel like maybe they deserve their own tier, which is exciting but safe. Am I going to have the bollocks to put them in Get Your Passport? I'll put them here for now. I like their business. Obviously, losing Strike isn't ideal, off to Brighton for 20 million, for PSR, SCR. But I think they've recruited well in that department. Harry Wilson going in there. I think they just need a bit more attacking options. They still feel an injury to Calvert-Lewin away. And I know he was injury-free last season. And it felt like how reliable is Calvert-Lewin's form last season? Is this Calvert-Lewin or is it a bit of an outlier? Because we've seen him score goals once for Everton, but most of the time he was quite underwhelming and injured. So are Leeds, is he going to continue to buck his trend, or is he going to go back to Goodison Park Calvert-Lewin and either be injured or just not at it? But I like Leeds. They were really good last season, especially in the second half of the season. Really good. Farke's got them. Farke's got the tactics. Ellen Road plays a big part. They've got an outside chance of European football. They may require one of those to not perform well and for them to be at their best. But I don't think you can dismiss it. I think Leeds will have a good season. Man City, I'm going to put in Get Your Passport. Maybe this should be in Can You Win It, but that feels like a default thing. That feels like a Pep Guardiola thing. And I might as well just wrap it up now. The top part, I don't see anything other than Arsenal winning the title. So for me to put someone in there would suggest that I think they can win the title. I don't think they can. I'm open to changing my mind, and I hope I do change my mind. But at this point, I just don't see anyone. I think I see a fight for the Champions League spaces, but not the title. Maresca going in, season of change, big change. Stones leaving, maybe not always in the team, but a big player, someone that's been at the Etihad for a long period of time. Rodri joining Barcelona. Bernardo Silva leaving. These are big players, big players that are leaving Man City alongside Pep Guardiola. A lot of change at the Etihad. And I think there's a lot of pressure on Maresca. I don't know if does he get to finish fifth? Let's just say fifth is Europa League is normal and not Champions League again. Does he get to finish fifth and get another bite at it next season? I think he does. I think they've got a lot of faith in him. I think they've picked him out for a long-term thing. And they've got to be patient with him. Man City might take a little while to get up and running. But I like him. I like Maresca. I liked him at Chelsea. I liked him at Leicester. Good manager. But I think I'm not so sure he's going to hit the ground running yet. I think he's got to prove himself, not just to Man City, but maybe to some Man City players as well. He doesn't quite have that stature that Pep Guardiola had. And I don't think the squad, they've got a really good squad, don't get me wrong. But is it man for man? Is it better than Liverpool's? I'm not so sure. I think there's gaps in that team at the minute. And they need Semenyo, Doku, good players, but are they top players? I'm not convinced by Man City this season. And by the way, Man City playing poorly is still probably getting Champions League football. I'm talking about the standards and expectations that Pep Guardiola set. I'm not convinced that he's going to have them challenging for the title. Nottingham Forest. It's a bit Leeds United. I'm a big fan of Oliver Glasner. I think it's a blessing in disguise for Oliver Glasner that they didn't win the Europa League. I'll put them here. I'll bottle it a little bit. I've got hopes. I've got big hopes for Nottingham Forest. They've done okay in the transfer window, I think. Still need to do a little bit more business. Elliot Anderson going should give them plenty of money to spend. Awoni going to Coventry City, 9 million. I think that's a big fee to get for like an injury-prone striker. So they need to still do a bit more in the window for this. But I really, really like Glasner. Too many wingers, maybe. I've seen a couple of them linked away. Can Ndoye become a number 10? I think he could, actually. Gibbs White should really excel under Glasner. Jesus should get on well under him as well. a lot of my expectations for Forest are because of the manager. I'm a fan of Glasner. I think he'll have them solid. I think he'll have them clinical, very efficient. I think they'll have a really good season. I do. I'll be surprised if Forest are not in the top half. And lastly, Sunderland. I put them in the safe but boring. There will be a drop-off because of European football. Not being too active in the transfer window. But they do because of European football. That's the reason for the drop-off, isn't it? European football. And I think the squad depth requires beefing up. But they've got a really good starting 11. I've seen a lot made of their lack of transfer business. But they've got a really good starting 11. Sunderland's priority this summer, in my opinion, was to retain the core of your team, retain your spine. Xhaka not going to Chelsea, committing to Sunderland, huge. Arguably better than anyone they could sign this summer. They sold Xhaka. Who could they bring in? Arguably, Xhaka is the best player. Him staying is the best bit of transfer news for them. I think sometimes, and I get guilty of this, we get shiny new toy syndrome where you want to see new signings, but actually sometimes it's about keeping hold of your best players, and that is exactly what Sunderland have done. Roofs is still there, Aldereti's there, Xhaka's there, Brobby's there, Leafy's there. They've still got really good players, and they need to add to it, absolutely. But last summer was a big summer, lots in, lots out, and they had a fantastic season. This summer, I think it's about just adding 2, 3, 4 players to what you've already got and just retaining what you've got, and they've done that so far. I think Sunderland will be fine. A good season, knockout stages, European football, top 10. A bad season, mid-bottom half of the table, an underwhelming European performance. And that would be good, by the way. That's still good in the bigger picture at Sunderland. They only got promoted. Last summer, they were preparing for their first season back in the Premier League after a long time out of it. They're just ahead of schedule, Sunderland. Like, they had an unbelievable season last season. And that, I know that's the ambitions of the owners. They want Sunderland to be playing European football. But I'd be surprised if it was on the plan for year 1 in the Premier League. Year 1 was probably just stabilise, just don't get relegated. Year 2, let's add to it, improve. They're just ahead of schedule, that's all. And expectations have shifted for Sunderland. And they should do. They're a bloody good team with a good manager. I think Sunderland, a good season, maybe top half. But it's just the Europa League fatigue. How much is it going to impact them? And it could be quite a bit. So I think there will be a drop-off. But I don't think it's going to see them plummet all the way down to the relegation battle, for example. Lebris is too good a manager. Xhaka's too good a captain. And I think they've got too many good players at that club. With a good end to the window, Sunderland could still have another bloody good season. And I'll tell you this, they should absolutely be trying to win that competition. Because it's possible. Anyway, that's what I expect from every team this season. Let me know yours in the comments below. And I will catch you in a bit.